Revamping World of Warcraft. What would Azeroth 2.0 look like? Probably look fantastic. Let's check out what Mr. Wow Krendor has to say.
What would a modern Azeroth look like today after it's been revamped? That's the question a lot of people are asking.
The revamp
and the question
is
we're
confirmed.
going to talk about today.
The revamp is happening.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Krendor Talks in front of a shitty green screen. Now, I already made a video called Is Azeroth Getting Revamped? And I do think it is, as well as many other people that you've probably seen on YouTube. So, you know, spoiler for that video, I do think it is. But I want to talk about how it's going to get revamped and how I think it'll get revamped and what I'd like to see in a revamp, right? And so some of it's the realistic ways I think it'll get revamped, and some of it's kind of what I hope is there after it's been revamped. So let's jump right into it. But first, I want to give a shout out to the channel sponsor, Zygor. Zygor's got retail WoW, classic WoW guides, gold farming guides, pet guides, mount guides. They got it all. I've been using them to level in classic hardcore as well. If you want to check it out for free, use my link in the description. And if you enjoy it and want to upgrade to an elite subscription, you can use code Krendor for 20% off.
Oh.
So the first thing I would love to see is the completion of the Booty Bay construction, because they have been working on Booty Bay for 13 years at this point. It's actually gone on longer than like numerous real life construction projects, which is impressive because those last quite some time.
It's because probably some fucking goblin is funneling money out of the project and actually just, you know, keeps taking people's money. That we need a little bit more money to finish this project. You know, we got the Booty Bay, we're creating all the new dock and everything, and it's costing way more than we thought. So, I'm going to need more money, and he keeps taking money and funneling it out of the project. That's guaranteed what's happening. That's why Booty Bay hasn't finished. Damn goblins.
Like, if you go there, the goblins are just still working on it. It's like, you got to go up and be like, dude.
Yeah.
It's been over a decade.
When are you guys going to finish,
man? Who's paying you now? It's crazy. And so I would actually love to just see the finished product.
Yeah,
like,
finished Booty Bay.
If they're working on it for this long, it's got to be good, right? I don't know what they're going to have there. Obviously there'll still be a bunch of pirates walking around and stuff, but a finished, completed Booty Bay would be fantastic. Next up, I think 1,000 Needles Shimmering Flats Return to the classic version is next on my list.
Yeah, we need to get the water out of there.
If the 1,000 Needles was all dried out again,
yeah,
right?
I agree.
I think it'd be cool. Maybe the water being there and then going away has done something. You know, maybe it's not as dry. Maybe there's some more plant life. I don't know. I'm not a geologist, weather scientist. But I do think, you know, the land has probably changed. Maybe there's some erosion.
Honestly, 1,000 Needles was so iconic. And that's the problem with, like, the last world revamp that they did in Cataclysm, was they didn't just revamp the world, they changed the world. Too much, in fact. Like, made like, old zones, you know, almost unrecognizable. Like, if you told somebody who played WoW today in its current form, and they were questing in 1,000 Needles, and you told them there was once a time where there was no water there, they wouldn't even be able to comprehend that, because it's such a different take on what it currently is. So, the revamp this time, I just want to see, like, an up-res, right? Like, we've up-resed all the characters in the game. Everyone's been brought up to HD, 1080p, you know, all the characters look new. But then you go somewhere like Ungoro Crater, and you got a tree made out of 3 pixels. So that doesn't look good. The contrast kind of is immersion breaking. So I'd like to see like a revamp in terms of like bringing everything into HD, and then yes, maybe a few tweaks here and there, like he's mentioning, that kind of, you know, makes things feel realistic, like a finished Booty Bay, or in this case, you know, maybe some fish skeletons on the ground in 1,000 Needles, because now the water's gone, but it was still once there.
Happening. Maybe there's more like winds and twists in 1,000 Needles, but I think the actual Shimmering Flats should be created back to the way it was, and the Raceway returns. I would love if they brought back the Mirage Raceway.
I remember finding this thing for the first time.
And it was like decked out, man. They had like actual gnome versus goblin races. The kind of like how they have like snail races and stuff now. You can go there. They're like zooming around. You would like get toys and stuff there. You could take part in races, watch the races. You could have people race against each other.
Yeah,
that'd be so cool. Just bring back the Mirage Raceway, the Raceway, and like just make it fully functioning, like 100% Raceway with gnomes versus goblins.
It'd be very cool if they created like a dragon flight, but it's like vehicles only, like ground vehicles, but like a dragon riding, you know, races where you got to go through the rings, you know, on a racetrack. That'd be so cool if they did something like that.
And I think it'd be really fun. Next, I would go Tanaris. So Tanaris, I think, could go back to being a bit more like a full-on desert and less like it's being taken over by water. I don't know if the water would actually take over more of it over time or how this would work technically, but I like Tanaris more when it was.
I like it a desert.
You know, just more of a desert
Yeah,
and
I
less
like
of
it
like
to
a
be a
weird
desert.
flooded desert. I don't know what it is now, but I prefer the old version. And I think
do
it'd be
too.
cool if it became like a pirate territory, right? Because there's like always these pirates all around.
pirate stuff,
In Tanaris. And so maybe, you know, it's more deserty, but the pirates have kind of taken over. And maybe there's still the trolls down there with Zul'Farrak, and those trolls have started expanding as well. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of cool things you could do with Tanaris and a lot of fun storylines you could play around with, but I think and it'd be cool because like they obviously talk about pirates and stuff, right? So maybe this can lead more into a pirate themed expansion, you know, and Tanaris becomes like the pirate
I don't know why
hub.
the fuck they didn't do it. They're not going to do it, I guess.
But I do prefer Tanaris when it's got more desert, more pirates, and more trolls. Next, I would love if the Barrens returned to more of a savanna-esque state. So more of like the, you know, African savanna,
interesting
right?
thought.
Is it savanna, whatever. It's tomato. Because questing through there in Classic WoW made me realize how much I love old Barrens and how chaotic the post-cataclysm Barrens is, right? There's like a lava crack in the middle. There's like a war going on in the south. The north is like still kind of the Barrens, but like
make the Barrens barren again.
There's like random. It's like all over the place.
Make a hat that says that.
I preferred when it knew what it was. It was barren.
Yeah.
It was dry. It was barren. There's like lions and hyenas and, you know, plain striders and zebras walking around and raptors. And you had a little part with the pirates. And you had a little part with like the centaurs and all the stuff. And I think it'd be cool if they played more into that, right? Like maybe go full centaur, right? Or maybe go... maybe something happens with Ratchet now, and it expands.
I do think like a simpler land like the Barren is more immersive than the crazy shit. I think that was part of the issue with Shadowlands and why we all hated leaving Azeroth for that long. Was it's hard to immerse yourself in something that is that high fantasy. Like there's high fantasy, it's cool, like a castle off into the distance, a dragon flying in the sky, like that shit's cool. But when you go so high fantasy that you're in a fucking sky with angels, or some kind of like, Ardenweald, you got fucking sky trees and stars falling and all kinds of weird shit going on and fairy people everywhere. That starts to almost become so high fantasy that you're like, oh, I'm playing a game. You know, I'm playing a game. This is a game. It's clearly a game. I like to feel more like I'm in a world that could somehow exist in my world. Now, obviously, there's fucking Tauren and shit. Like, how does that possible? But I don't know, it's like a brain thing. It's more relatable when you're in the Barrens and it's like this kind of like land that's barren, like he's describing, rather than a giant stream of lava and elemental storms fighting each other. Like that's just more unnatural. I like the more natural look. It's more immersive. Where like
pirates are getting closer to Ratchet. I know they're, near there. I feel like there's a lot of fun ways you could actually go back to making the Barrens feel a bit more barren. Although now they have northern and southern Barrens, but I mean, that shouldn't really stop anything, especially if they start combining a lot of zones, like I thought they would when I talk about it in my Azeroth getting revamped video.
Combining zones, that'd be interesting.
I think Azshara picking a direction is what I wrote down. So obviously back in Classic WoW, it was a very kind of autumn-esque, foresty, magical type of area, right? There wasn't a lot going on. It felt unfinished because I think it was unfinished.
Probably was.
But that actually gave it this sort of mysticism and kind of mysteriousness about it that I thought was really cool. Then we get the post-cataclysm, and it becomes very industrialized, and it kind of took away a lot of the magic and fun
theme here. There's goblins that are ruining things.
I really enjoyed with Azshara. And so, I mean, as the goblins do, they're like, we're drilling for oil here, So I wanted to just pick a direction, right? Let's go back to either maybe the forests and magic and stuff have kind of overtaken the goblins and pushed them away. Maybe, there's more like Naga here. Maybe, just more elves or night elves have come back. Like, I don't know, it's just something, right?
Yeah.
And then
something less
or you could go the other way, right? Maybe goblins have completely destroyed this place. They've ripped it of
goblins, man.
resources. They've chopped everything down.
I don't know why I find it so funny.
Just I feel like it's got to be one or the other, right? We can't just sit in this like weird hybrid state of like what's going on. Like pick a direction. Maybe they finish their big race.
I find it funny that goblins are like literally humans. Like what they do is like what humans would probably do in actual Azeroth, and they just literally show up in a zone and like mine for the blood of the planet, or drill for fucking oil, or create a disastrous ghetto in Orgrimmar. Like fucking goblins just show up and really fuck shit up. They are the most human race in World of Warcraft. It's so funny.
Way going around. Or you go the other way. Maybe the race, they stop building the raceway.
Of course, time is a money friend. I mean, they're just motivated by money
now. Like I think there's some really cool directions you could pick, but you gotta pick one. Next, I think I would love updates to Mulgore, Feralus, and Hinterlands, but like really small updates. So you know how Arathi Highlands
like
got its big update?
Yeah.
I would love that style of update to Mulgore, Feralus, and Hinterlands.
This is what I want to see in most of World of Warcraft with a revamp, is I just want to see an up-res. I don't necessarily want to see places change. I don't want Ungoro Crater, like I was describing earlier, to completely change. I just want it to be up-resed. I want it to look like, like this does. This looks like a more modern game than what it was before.
You just kind of modernized those zones a bit, right?
Yeah.
Just added some new assets, maybe polished up some things here and there. But honestly, I like the zones the way they are. Obviously, I think they would add new quests and some updated stuff depending on what's going on. But I think an Arathi Highlands style update for those zones would be cool, and maybe for a lot of zones, because I mean I think a lot of people
that's
bash
what I want to
BFA
see for the majority
like
of zones,
Warfronts and stuff, right? But if you actually look at the new zones of like Darkshore and Arathi Highlands, they did really good jobs updating the zones and giving them a modern feel while keeping that classic style. And so I think that's what I'd like to see for a lot of these zones, is just modernization but keeping that classic feel. And speaking of Darkshore, I think it'd be cool if they started building Darkshore back up. Like we already now have a base for Darkshore, right? A foundation, not like a base. Maybe the Night Elves have started building back up there, right? Maybe they got the dock is back up. Maybe they got some smaller cities. Maybe they're doing something like maybe just something where Darkshore starts feeling like the Darkshore of old, and they've began building it back up, because that's just what happens, right? I mean, look at Booty Bay. They started building it back up. They haven't finished yet. But, if enough time goes on,
I said that's a crux. So they're
things
not
are
really
going to
building.
return
taking money
to normal or even bigger than what they were. So I think building back Darkshore would be cool. And speaking of being up there, I think Moonglade taking on a bigger Druid feel would be really cool.
That's a good idea.
We have so much Druid stuff and Emerald Grove and Dream and all this stuff going on. And Moonglade kind of feels like a town with a big moon lake. It doesn't really feel very druidy to me, and so I think maybe a Moonglade revamp, not a big revamp, but just making it feel more like it's a druid home. You know what I mean? I think that would be
cool.
A pretty cool thing. Just updated building. They wouldn't have to do a lot. They already have a lot of the assets. I think just adding in a lot of those assets to Moonglade would make it feel a lot better. Then moving down a little bit, going to Winter Spring, I think.
Look, as far as revamping and nostalgia is concerned, because there's Deadric's talking about, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I mean, if people want to be nostalgic, they can go back to vanilla. But I don't think an up-res of a zone would necessarily change the feel of a zone. Like, we saw like we've seen those like Unreal Engine redoes Westfall. They still look great. It still looks like Westfall. It's still nostalgic. We're not. What Cataclysm's issues were and why it crushed nostalgia was it changed the zones completely. Some of them are not even recognizable to what they were, like we said, Thousand Needles. So I just think an up-res version of a zone doesn't... I don't think people are nostalgic for 2 polygons. People are nostalgic for Elwyn Forest because of how well-placed Lion's Pride Inn is and what that means to them, and the music and the little green rolling hills and that little camp of Murlocs off in the distance that fuck them, honestly, because they killed me so many times in hardcore. But I think an up-res version of Elwyn Forest would not necessarily crush nostalgia. Now create a path of lava through Elwyn Forest and burn some trees and then create a new pack of elemental fuckboys in the corner that are destroying a camp of Murlocs. Yeah, that's destroying the zone. That's crushing nostalgia. But an up-res in general, I don't think does. I think people would still recognize the zone and still have love for the zone and memories of that zone.
Winter Spring would change from what it currently is, and maybe it either gets more snow, maybe there's like a bunch of climate things going on in the ocean and dragon isles, all this stuff, and it makes it snow even more in Winter Spring. Or maybe it goes the opposite, and a lot of the hot springs start melting the snow, and it gets a little more like primal looking, but it wouldn't be like full on Gorgrond or something, right? But a little more Gorgrond than it is now, like less snow, more like mountainous, and a bunch of like hot springs. All that. I don't know, but I do think it'd be cool.
I want the more snow route.
Have a bit of a winter spring mix up. But I actually think more snow and like a weird climate thing would be a lot of fun as well. Then we go down to Silithus. Remove the sword. just remove the sword.
Delete it.
Everybody wants the sword gone. It's still there. It's got to go.
Sword extraction.
And then Silithus can just go back to being Bugland. I don't know what they'll do with it. Maybe make it more of like an archaeology.
What sword is he even talking about?
Dig site location. Maybe revamped archaeology profession in Silithus.
Like realistically, technologically, how the fuck do you remove that sword? Honestly, like how does that thing get removed from the crust of the planet? Because it's not just the tip. Sargeras did not just put the tip in. That thing is like halfway into the fucking planet. How do you remove that shit? What do you do with the hole that's left behind? Like, how the fuck do you engineer a way to get that fucking sword out of the planet? I don't know. There has to be some magic involved. There'd have to be a magical solution. Because just like the logistics of removing a sword that size from a planet, it just doesn't seem realistic.
Maybe just more bugs and maybe Ungoro, maybe dinosaurs start getting in. I don't know how the dinosaurs haven't gotten to Ungoro to Silithus at this point. You would think they'd just start being like, hey guys, look over here. It's like a crazy bug desert. What if we just go like walk over and start eating them? Maybe the dinosaurs of Ungoro start eating the Silithus bugs, start clashing. I don't know. Next, we got up here, which is Lordaeron.
Right, maybe Sargeras returns, and part of his return is, now he knows he's been played by the Dreadlords. Right, so he's angry. Him and Illidan come back, now best buds, and they're coming to fuck the entire Dreadlord nation up. And part of Sargeras coming back is he reaches back in and pulls his fuck. He reveals his greatest ability, his pull-out game, and he fucking pulls that sword out. Yeah, maybe that happens.
I know the Undercity went through the whole thing. It like got evacuated. It got raided, like so much stuff. And now maybe the Alliance have actually moved back up there and taken it over, and now they've restored Lordaeron. I think that'd be a lot of cool, although they'd probably have to really build it up. But I think it'd be cool to make Lordaeron, and then you'd have Stormwind down here, Lordaeron all the way up here, revamped, and then if you go to Kalimdor, maybe they can get a new capital over here, but like they don't really need it. I mean, everyone just goes to Orgrimmar, Thunderbluff, or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. Or just the capital.
Yeah, Dragonfly's definitely building up some Titan shit.
But I do think having a Lordaeron capital would actually be pretty sick.
I wish.
Especially because they've always talked about it. Like, it's the ruins of Lordaeron.
Such a
and now,
legendary
below
city.
Lordaeron, the Undercity's all broken. And it's like, well, how about they rebuild Lordaeron? That'd be pretty sweet, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if they'd actually do that, but I do think it'd be cool. And then the final thing that I thought of, there's plenty more that you can do, but the final thing I would really love to see again is Stranglethorn Vale becoming more jungle and less of like
more jungle,
cataclysmic, whatever. Like, there's whirlpools and shit going on now. All right, we can stop that.
Yeah, get rid of that shit.
And we can go back to being, more of a jungle.
Yeah,
right.
I
think
I forgot
people think of Stranglethorn, they think of
there.
getting lost in this jungle, being afraid of getting ganked in the jungle, right? There's all these different animals and shit going around trying to kill you.
So many animals.
There's these trolls over here. Zul'Gurub.
I died so many times back in Stranglethorn Vale just from pulling shit.
And like all this stuff. And I think getting back to that, not like specifically those things, but I think back to that jungle feel. Because right now it just feels too chaotic. They like split it up. They did the Barrens thing where they split it up.
Yeah.
There's whirlpools, there's like damage, there's like I think the biggest thing with the world right now is there's just too much damage everywhere.
There's too
right?
much damage.
And I think nature and the world would
My Azeroth
essentially
is
repair that,
damaged.
and the people living in the world. And so I think just in the grand scheme of things, I want a lot of that cataclysmic damage repaired, and I just want to see what it would look like. But really, I want the Mirage Raceway. So that's it. Let me know in the comment section what you would love to see in a revamped Azeroth, because I would love to hear it. That's kind of my little wish list, and thank you very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. If you missed the latest Pointless Top 10, it was Pointless Top 10 Gorillas. Speaking of Stranglethorn, go check it out right there. And yeah. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah.
Great ending. I love WoW Crendor. Dude, he's right, man. He's right. Revamp Azeroth, and by revamp we mean take it back to what it was, but up-res it. That's it. Undo the Cataclysm, up-res a bunch of shit, take 2 pixels and make them 20, and give us a beautiful, version of the old version. That's what a revamped Azeroth should look like. I hope that happens. I hope a lot of the stuff he talked about I totally agree with, as I usually do with WoW Crendor. Good stuff.